Right, let's get started, shall we? Whiskey, the perfect drink for when you either feel very lonely, overly sophisticated, and when you consider spending a few hours in a dark room dressed in your favorite bathrobe contemplating the meaning of a biscuit while smoking a cigar. Let's have a look at some actually interesting facts about whiskey. Number 1. I had always thought there's probably some difference to whiskey with and without the E. Whiskey, spelled without E, is Scotch, obviously from Scotland where the Scots live. Whiskey with the E is when the stuff is from anywhere else, including Ireland, Japan, Canada, and the US, where other folks live. There are more countries which produce whiskey, among them Denmark, Wales, Finland, and even India. Number 2. All the fancy words can be a tad bit confusing sometimes. Oh, this is a very fine single malt, while this one isn't. Often people don't really know what that actually means. Now, to clear things up quickly, a single malt whiskey is no more and no less than the product of a single distillery. A single barrel whiskey is exactly what it says, the product of a single barrel of whiskey, unmixed with any other whiskey. Flavor and color vary a bit depending on the barrel, and therefore, single barrel whiskies are very unique. Blended malt whiskies are a mix of different blends from different areas, as in from multiple distilleries in Scotland, for example. Number 3. Apparently it's not okay to mix whiskey with other stuff, like Coke or lemonade or whatever. Now, I'm not that much of a whiskey drinker, but even I understand why you shouldn't do it. Those are handcrafted drinks produced in a very complex process which has been refined over centuries, and some whiskey makers pour their heart and soul into it. Just like with wine, there is sort of a component of art in their craft. And not to mention, whiskey is very expensive as well. So yeah, I guess it's very unwise to add some cheap chemical horseshit to it which ruins the flavor. Ice actually dulls the flavor as well, so don't do that to your whiskey. Adding water, however, is perfectly acceptable. Helps to bring out the flavors a bit. Few drops are perfectly fine. Number 4. On the discovery of whiskey. Scotch whiskey is, actually, a distilled beer. Brewers back in the day noticed that the clear liquid condensing on windows and walls during the brewing process of beer smelled nice and tasted good. That was a whopping 70% alcohol. People then started to boil beer, but condensing it down to deliberately this spirit in order to get more placid than usual. Now, the problem with that in the early days was that it contained methanol, which literally made you blind drunk. Number 5. Whiskey is immortal. The oldest single malt whiskey is over 70 years old. Now, you can technically keep a whiskey bottle indefinitely. You only have to ensure you keep it out of direct sunlight and unopened. The sunlight doesn't make the whiskey go bad, but it does alter its taste in a very unpleasant way, although it would still remain drinkable. Even if you open the bottle but seal it properly after drinking, it can stay for a very long time. Number 6. Whiskey is affected by weather. Just like with wine, the weather can have quite the influence on the making of whiskey. Temperature swings, for instance, make the whiskey barrels contract and expand again, which then affects more or less airflow in the barrels and ultimately the taste of the whiskey. If there is a certain dominant smell in the air surrounding the distillery, maybe from apple or cherry trees, you will also be able to taste that in the whiskey. Number 7. Whiskey can be made from any grain. Usually whiskey is of course made with barley, corn or rye, but if you like you can use any grain you fancy. There is a distillery which uses oats, quinoa, farro and spelt for making whiskey too. There aren't too many distilleries fiddling about with alternative whiskey making though, since the whiskey needs to go through a certain aging process. Imagine you try out a new sort of grain just to find out it's utter rubbish in the end, and you wasted all sorts of resources on it. On a side note, even diabetics' urine can be used to make whiskey since it has very high sugar content. Haven't tried it though and won't do, for reasons. Number 8. Water affects the taste of whiskey as much as grain does. The source of water is crucial when it comes to creating a perfect flavor for whiskey. Jack Daniels, for instance, takes all the water from a natural source flowing through limestone caves. The areas of Tennessee and Kentucky, for instance, are nicely suited because there the natural water contains very little iron, which will turn alcohol black and bitter. The ideal water for whiskey is cold, rich in minerals and free of iron. Number 9. You can get a PhD in Brewing and Distilling. As you can imagine, there aren't too many whiskey making doctors around. Dr. Don Livermore is master blender for J.P. Wiser's, and he also has a bachelor's in microbiology, as well as the obvious PhD in Brewing and Distilling from Edinburgh's Harriet Watt University. There is a degree for everything nowadays, and this one is very unique indeed. Number 10. The word whiskey is actually derived from the Gaelic words you see on the screen because I'm too incompetent to pronounce it that I couldn't be bothered. That word again comes from the Latin aqua vitae, which means water of life. Apparently these spirits were first used by monks for medical purposes. Number 11. Hans Island is hardly more than a large piece of rock located in the middle of the Kennedy Channel between Canada and Greenland. There are no inhabitants on Hans Island, and the history about its discovery and mapping are quite confusing. The reason for dispute is that it is located in a spot where geography and international law collide. The territory has been negotiated for decades, but the issue remains unsolved. The maritime border north and south of the island were established, but not the island itself. Nowadays, the militaries of Canada and Denmark periodically visit the island, remove the other country's flag, and leave a bottle of Danish Schnapps or Canadian whiskey for the next team to continue the job. If only more countries were able to treat each other this way. Number 12. Remind me again, what exactly happens when alcohol is set on fire? In 2000, a whiskey warehouse in Kentucky caught fire, and the content of 17,000 barrels of whiskey set the surrounding forest on fire. A fifth of the whiskey flowed into the Kentucky River, which then resulted in the death of 220,000 fish along 66 miles of the river. In 1875, a brewery in Ireland caught fire, causing the whiskey to flow through the streets. The only casualties were 13 people who were a bit too happy about the free whiskey and died of alcohol poisoning. Number 13. Did you know that the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson, asked for whiskey on his deathbed? He was losing his battle against a severe illness and only had a few days to live, but the nurse who took care of him at that time just wouldn't give any whiskey to him. Number 14. The famous scientist Nikola Tesla hardly ever ate meat, and he didn't smoke or drink coffee or even tea. He did, however, drink whiskey every day because he thought it would make him live to 150. Apparently, alcohol was different from meat or coffee to him, since he claimed it was not a stimulant but the elixir of life. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching, subscribe if you like, and goodbye.